Whoa! Welcome to the Treasure Tree Therapy Planters Podcast. I'm your host, Master Cheese. All right, you in for another good one. As always, we're going to start with some injuries. A lot of injuries happening, shaking it off this week. Then we're going to progress into you know what time it already is. It's prime time. Then we'll progress a little bit more information going on from the Bears' loss as they lost to the Lions for another L. And I waited a week for this, but the Chicago Bears. Ugh. Lastly, we're going to work on some NBA injuries with a little dibbly dash of that. And then we're going to talk about Klay Thompson today. So you all will be in for a good one. Stay tuned. Stay locked in. Bloop. Sunday. All right, welcome back to the Treasure Tree Therapy Planners Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Master Cheese. The tree behind me was here last week, and it is gone. But we're going to move forward. We're going to touch on some injuries, and then, wait 1 second. We got breaking news. It appears that Joe Burrow will be out for the remainder of the season. Tough blow for the Bengals. He had some injuries with the calf, and now he's out with a wrist injury, is what they're saying. It appears he'll need surgery to repair a ligament in his throwing arm. Very important to have your throwing arm intact. I'm not sure how the Cincinnati Bengals will do for the rest of the season. There might be an outside chance, in my own opinion, that he might come back for the playoffs, but ruling him out for the remainder of the season seems to be what's best to keep the media off their heads. Now, prognosis for next year, Joe Burrow should come back fighting. He might be even an MVP candidate next year. He had a slow start this year, and so he'll have a long offseason to work on some things and some insufficiencies. Um, Hopefully, best of luck to him. And then we're going to move forward from that, and then we're going to look at another injury. Going to look at the injuries that have been like some nagging injuries going on through the league with Cooper Kupp, and we're going to look at Aaron Jones. So both these athletes have been experiencing hamstring injuries. Uh, Aaron Jones experienced his hamstring injury. He was out early in the season. Cooper Kupp was on IR in the beginning of the season. So looking at how these injuries have already started in the beginning of the season, and now looking at the results in the end, it appears that Aaron Jones has the MCL sprain, and he'll be out for a couple weeks. He's doubtful going into the matchup this weekend against the Lions for Thanksgiving. The Green Bay Packers have to figure out how to take care of that. And then we're going to progress for Cooper Kupp. He also has some hamstring injuries and is lingering with an ankle injury. Now, it appears to be day-to-day, which is also positive news, seeing as you have your star athlete who's already been out. But looking at these nagging injuries, you come from the offseason into the regular season. I just want you to understand, if you have the best and you are the best and you're doing everything you can do and you're still getting injured, maybe the best is not the best enough. Maybe you can do a little bit more. And I'm going to always touch on these neurological compensations that build up over time and they result into these weird nagging injuries. So Aaron Jones has a long offseason for him as he looks to come back and be a star running back as he was in years prior. And the same thing for Cooper Kupp. He's been battling a lot of injuries since the Super Bowl run. So with those guys, if you can clear out some of those neurological compensations, it can clear out some of those pain signals that are going on, and you can continue to have a longer career than you would have without square one or any neurological intervention. So that's my PSA for those injuries. And then we're going to touch on another injury. Mark Andrews, tight end for the Baltimore Ravens, appears to have an ankle injury. Now, the severity is a little bit tough to say. It's between like a sprained ankle and a broken bone, it appears. Watching the film, you can kind of see it tweak a little bit. But he is out for what looks like to be the majority of the season or the rest of the season. They're going to be precautious with their star athlete. But it's going into where the league is trying to rule out the kind of tackle that he experienced. A hip drop tackle, similar to how a horse collar tackle was, or tackles to the quarterback's lower extremities, taking these guys out. Now, this could be big for a lot of the defensive players, as the league has already implemented a lot of changes already that has made it difficult for defensive players to maintain their importance or do their job. The hip drop is a maneuver that does kind of seem a little dirty on the outside. I don't know if you all play basketball, if you're getting bridged. Of course, it's kind of legal, but it is also kind of dirty. So we'll look out for the next year's update on those kind of tackles, which will be kind of hard to monitor, seeing as you're telling me that I can't tackle the way I can tackle, and I have to tackle the way you want me to tackle. Richard Sherman kind of went off on Skip Bayless saying the same thing.
You're not speaking from experience, so stop raising your voice, Skip.
Okay.
Talk to me, Skip.
All right. Are you going to let me speak or not?
Well, you're speaking on something you don't have no experience doing. So, I mean, what point can you really make? I've covered the game
for a lot longer than you've been alive.
You've covered the game. Yeah. I've actually played the game longer than you ever played. So, like, what we're talking about is something that actually happens in the game that you can't experience unless you play it.
Does Rich
agree? Not to that extent, but this is going to be tough to be a defensive player in the NFL, and we'll see what the updated rule changes are in the next year's season. All right. From the injuries, we're going to progress to the you know what time it is. 1 second, y'all. I'll be right back. Prime time. Yes. Coach Primetime Sanders, however you want to name him, took another L this weekend. And they still look like my fantasy football team. All right, carrying on. They lost, Colorado Buffaloes lost this week to Washington State. Not only did they lose, they lost in all phases of the game. On offense, defense, and special teams. The score of the game was 56-14, which is disgusting and not really showing a lot of competitiveness as you showed early in the season. Now, if you watch the game, if you watch any of the highlights, even from the beginning, couple drives where a fumble was taken for a touchdown, and then you give up a special teams touchdown, you're just losing the game in all facets of the game. And that's just showing that you're not a good football team. That's not what good football teams are doing. They're not losing in all phases of the game. Now, looking at Primetime Sanders and Shedeur Sanders, he had a very tough game. You know, he's been putting up a lot of respectable numbers. And again, despite these numbers, he's still an NFL quality quarterback. In this game, he went 6 for 10, 86 yards, and 1 touchdown. It appears they pulled him out early in the second half, because the damage was already too much, and they have another tough matchup going on this weekend. Primetime was very confident in his press conference as to say that their program is going to turn around to a certain degree, and he's realizing, and I think he's understanding what it takes to really be a respectable coach at this level. A lot of shine was given early in the season. A lot of hand claps were given, and he even touched on it in his post-game conference.
You got to want this. You may not have the same amount of hand claps that you had at the beginning. You may not have the same amount of noise and the same amount of fans or the same amount of passion, but you got to figure this thing out, and you got to play.
As he's saying is that, you know, people loved you in the beginning, they don't love you now. And I like his excitement. I like his determination. Even through these hard times of going through a losing streak, he's still confident in his guys and confident in his ability to turn a program around. We'll touch on recapping how his season went, but so far he has one more matchup going up this weekend. He has to play Utah. It's going to be a tough matchup. Now, this in reality is primetime Colorado Buffaloes and Shedeur Sanders bowl game. This is the bowl game for them. You're going up against a ranked opponent. You're very much the underdog, and you are on a losing streak. It'd be great to go out on a win. Very improbable, but, you know, anything is possible. And we just got to give it some time. All right, cool. And then from there, we're going to progress from there to, I'm going to take these off before I even mention. Hold on 1 second. The Chicago Bears. Ugh, yuck, yuck, yuck. Positive news to see Justin Fields coming back out. Very positive to see him doing some things. The Bears are very much in the driver's seat to a victory, an upset win against the Detroit Lions. But in order to win, you have to know how to win, and they blew that cash. Yes, they blew that cash, and they took that L, and they went home crying, just like the rest of the fans have been doing all year. And I say that to say This game comes down to show you what kind of talent you have on your team, what kind of talent you have at the coaching, with the coaching staff. You're up 2 scores with under 5 minutes to go, and you cannot finish and win that game. Now, Justin Fields was productive. He had some good numbers that I don't even really want to touch on because the most important stat was him winning that game. It was interesting to me to see him doing a little dancing on the sidelines as the game was still kind of tight. That kind of changed the game, and it's showing me, and this is respectfully, Justin Fields is a good talent, and I really hope that he comes back as a Chicago Bear because you don't really have talented quarterbacks that he can do what he can do. He has some very impressive throws, has some very impressive runs, but it comes down to crunch time. You need a quarterback that can win you games in crunch time, and they have to learn it and know how to win. Justin Fields, unfortunately, is still a kid. He is still a young talent, and he doesn't know how to be a professional at this moment in time. He doesn't know how to win games and end games with his mind and his intelligence. And that's also attributed to the coaching staff. The coaching staff is not doing the best for Justin Fields. But when you have a quality quarterback, they are able to overtake and overcome these issues that the coaching staff is having. Now, the Bears defense played pretty well. They had a lot of turnovers. So I'm not going to even put it on the Bears defense down the stretch. It comes down to your offense and getting touchdowns instead of field goals down the line. We kick way too many field goals, and we're not producing touchdowns, which is how you win games. This is also a reflection of how when the Bears played the Denver Broncos at home. You're up, you're winning, you're excited, but you don't know how to finish the game. Comes down late in games, and you need to see what kind of team you have down the stretch. Patrick Mahomes isn't Patrick Mahomes because he's winning all his games. He has some comeback victories, similar to Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, and all these elite quarterbacks in the league. If Justin Fields wants to be respected, he needs to learn how to win games down the stretch. He needs to learn how to execute down the stretch. I'm not putting this on the coaches. I'm putting this on Justin Fields. We've been bragging on the coaches all game. They did a pretty decent job, and you had the ball in Justin Fields' hand. Not only that, down the stretch, you have 2 timeouts left, under 40 seconds to go, backed up on your end zone, and we fumble the ball, don't even have a chance to even kick a field goal, 50-yarder, and anything like that. That's just bad management. That's just bad skills, and we need to improve in that phase. If Justin Fields wants to be if he wants to be an all-star, Pro Bowler, he has to clean that up. And that comes through the mind, and that comes through the coaches. So the Bears suck, and we are going to continue to suck until we clean these things up. Now, as bad as that loss was, the season is pretty much 90% over with as far as making the playoffs. But if we can muster up some wins, we'll see. This weekend will be a big loss or a win for us. We lose this game, it's a wrap. We might as well just look to prepare for next year and see what we're going to do with our draft picks. So, but positive sign for Justin Fields again. I do want to reiterate that he did have a good comeback game. He showed some very impressive things. At this level, you just have to have a quarterback that can win games. Josh Allen is a great talent, but at the end of the day, he continues to lose down the stretch, and he will not be a respected quarterback until he gets to the Super Bowl and wins one. So talent is not enough. You need a Super Bowl, and you need to show teams that you are that guy. So progressing from the NFL, we're going to move forward, and we're going to talk about the NBA. This segment, we're going to look at the NBA. All right, I'm going to get in a little closer with this. It's a little chilly out here, but I'm going to make it. Klay Thompson of the Golden State Warriors has been arguably one of the best shooters of all time, or top 5 shooters of all time. He experienced an Achilles injury and a torn ACL injury in his career. The ACL injury occurred when he was in the playoffs playing the Raptors, which they eventually lost, and Kawhi Leonard won a championship. And then he tore his Achilles, which is common after knee injuries in practice in the offseason, and had to sit out. Klay Thompson has been through a lot, and he's persevered, and he's still playing in the NBA, which not a lot of people are able to come back and still produce. He's had some good games. He's had some okay games, but, it's still not quite Klay. Now, I've been watching Klay for a very long time. I've been writing up on Klay for a very long time. When you go through surgeries like that, that's tough on the body. I know ideally we wanted to say that lifting weights and doing these things will be enough, but that has not been the case for Klay. Klay is still struggling. He's having a hard time. He's surrounded by a lot of talent, but the Golden State Warriors aren't the Golden State Warriors if Klay Thompson can't produce. Looking at his body type, his Achilles and his ankles and his calves are smaller than the other leg. He's done a good job this offseason, has building that bulk up, but it's still not as good as it could be. Looking at that, he's also has a hard time dribbling to certain sides of the court. He favors one side and he shoots on one side. His inability to change direction on both sides of the court is cutting his ability to score. Looking at this film, his highlight from looking at some film from his offseason work where he's working, he has a hard time moving in certain areas. You can show he's comfortable moving on one side of the court and not the other. This is his disadvantage. And this is the most important part. And I want y'all to listen to this. This is the reason why Klay Thompson is having a hard time. It's because his inability to play defense. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? His inability to play defense. Klay Thompson, when he came into the league, was one of the few two-way players. It was him and Kawhi neck and neck as far as who were the best two-way players you can have in the league, playing defense and scoring on offense. Since then, Klay has this inability to change directions going either side of the court. He's strong going left or he's strong going right. He has these disadvantages over the long haul of games. This inability to be a great defender is what's causing him to at least have that drop off and that points per game. In addition to that, he can't shoot coming off screens going on certain sides of the court. He favors being on the left side of the wing, which he's comfortable with, but it's his inability to be evenly on both sides of the court and attacking evenly on both sides of the court, which is limiting his ability. Now, I say all that to say this is that when you look at what you have and you say, I have the best, and then year after year, you see how your numbers start to decline, and then you need to realize that you might have the best, but it's not the best of the best. I believe Klay Thompson's situation, if he's able to implement some neurological interventions, switch up a little bit of his strategies, be a little bit more evenly and a little bit more balanced, he can still be a 20 points per game average in the league. Now, the season is still early. Hopefully he doesn't have any nagging injuries, but that's just something I want to touch on for Klay Thompson's injuries. Just watching him run, even his run is not the best, but not terrible, but not the best. He just needs to clean up the calf and clean up the knee and implement some more neurological interventions, and I think that the Golden State Warriors can possibly get one more championship before it's all said and done. All right. Now, I believe that Draymond Green is also a candidate for some neurological interventions, but we'll touch on that because I don't want him to put me in a headlock. On that note, that is all I have to say. As I like to tell you all, I would love to keep these podcasts nice and short. It is Thanksgiving weekend. You all have a great, happy Thanksgiving. Whether you are celebrating or not, it is a great time to be around family and friends. But on to the next one. If you want more information, you can check out the Treasure Tree Therapy Planners podcast. We will have the Treasure Tree Trail Mix releasing for the holidays, and just look out for that in the upcoming weeks. Until then, Treasure Tree Therapy, planting seeds today for future generations' success.